The stars were quiet that night. They always were in deep space, far from any sun or planet. Lieutenant Ken Jinho sat alone in the observation deck of the research vessel Horizon's Edge. He liked this spot. It was peaceful. The endless darkness outside the window made him feel small, but also free. Jinho was 32 years old. He had short black hair and tired eyes that had seen too many long shifts. He came from Bazan, a coastal city on Earth where the sea met the sky in ways that reminded him of space. He missed the smell of salt water. He missed his sister Hana and her terrible cooking. He missed home. But duty called him here to the edge of known space, where humanity was still learning what lay beyond. The Horizon's Edge was a small ship. It carried only 12 crew members, all scientists and engineers except for Jinho and 2 other security officers. Their mission was simple. They were mapping new star systems and collecting data. Nothing dangerous. Nothing exciting. Just the slow, careful work of exploration. Jinho checked his watch. It was almost time for his shift to end. He stood up and stretched his arms. His back hurt from sitting too long. He thought about the warm meal waiting for him in the mess hall. Maybe tonight he would call Hana through the long-range communicator. It had been weeks since they talked. He never got that chance. The first explosion hit the ship without warning. The lights flickered and died. Red emergency lights came on, painting everything in blood colors. Alarms screamed through the corridors. Jinho grabbed the wall as the ship shook violently. His training kicked in immediately. He ran toward the bridge, his boots pounding against the metal floor. Other crew members were running too, their faces filled with fear and confusion. Nobody knew what was happening. When Jinho reached the bridge, he saw Captain No Yujin standing at the main console. Her face was pale. Her hands were shaking. "What hit us?" Jinho asked. The captain pointed at the screen. Jinho looked and felt his blood turn cold. A ship hung in space outside their window. It was massive, at least 10 times the size of the Horizon's Edge. Its shape was strange and alien, with curves and angles that made no sense to human eyes. The hull was dark purple, almost black, and covered with symbols that glowed with soft blue light. "We received no warning," Captain No said. Her voice was barely a whisper. "They just appeared and fired." Another blast hit the ship. The floor tilted sharply. Jinho heard screams from somewhere behind him. Metal groaned and tore. The Horizon's Edge was dying. "All hands, abandon ship." The captain shouted into the communicator. But even as she spoke, Jinho knew it was too late. Their escape pods were on the lower deck, and that section was already flooding with fire and broken machinery. The alien ship moved closer. A beam of light shot out from its belly and touched the Horizon's Edge. The light wrapped around the human vessel like fingers closing around a small insect. "They're pulling us in," someone said. Jinho watched as the stars outside disappeared. The Horizon's Edge was being swallowed by the alien ship. He could hear the crew crying, praying, calling out names of people they loved. He thought of Hana. He thought of the sea. The ship shook one final time, and then everything went still. For a long moment, nobody moved. The emergency lights still glowed red. The alarms had stopped. There was only silence and the sound of breathing. Then the doors opened. The creatures that entered were tall, taller than any human. Their skin was gray and smooth like stone. They had 4 arms and long fingers that ended in sharp points. Their faces had no nose, only 2 large black eyes that reflected the red light like mirrors. They moved with a strange grace, like shadows given form. They were called the Valari. Humanity had heard whispers about them from other alien species. A powerful empire that watched from the edges of space. A civilization that had never made contact with Earth. Until now. The Valari soldiers moved through the bridge quickly, and without mercy. They carried weapons that made no sound but killed instantly. One by one, the crew of the Horizon's Edge fell. Captain No tried to fight. She lasted 3 seconds. The 2 other security officers fired their guns, but the bullets bounced off the alien armor like rain off stone. Jinho watched his friends die. He watched and could do nothing. When the killing stopped, only Jinho remained alive. He stood in the middle of the bridge, surrounded by bodies, his gun empty in his hand. A Valari soldier approached him and studied him with those cold black eyes. "This one," the alien said in a voice that sounded like grinding metal. "This one we keep." They took him. They dragged him through corridors filled with strange lights and stranger smells. Jinho did not struggle. He was saving his strength. He was thinking, before they pulled him from the bridge, he had done one thing. One small thing that the Valari did not notice. He had reached the emergency console and sent a message. Just 3 words, sent on the fastest frequency, aimed directly at Earth. "They have me." The Valari destroyed the Horizon's Edge after that. They burned it to nothing and scattered the pieces across empty space. They thought they had erased all evidence. They thought nobody would know. They were wrong. Somewhere far away, on a small blue planet, the message arrived. It appeared on screens in a military base where people worked day and night watching the stars. A young officer read the words and felt her heart stop. She ran to tell her commander Earth had received the message, and Earth would answer. The cell was white. The walls were white. The floor was white. The ceiling was white. There was no window, no color, nothing but endless white that hurt Jinho's eyes. He had been here for 3 days. Or maybe 4. It was hard to tell. The lights never changed. They stayed bright all the time, burning into his skull even when he closed his eyes. He had not slept more than a few minutes at a time since they put him here. This was his prison. A small white box floating somewhere in the Valari research station called Thorak Prime. He knew the name because the guards said it sometimes when they thought he could not understand them. But Jinho understood more than they knew. He listened carefully to every word they spoke. He watched their movements. He memorized everything. On the 5th day, they came for him. 2 Valari guards entered his cell and grabbed his arms with their cold gray hands. They pulled him through long corridors that curved and twisted in ways that made his head spin. The station was built for alien bodies, not human ones. The gravity felt wrong. The air tasted strange, like metal and something sweet that made him want to gag. They brought him to a large room filled with machines and screens. In the center of the room stood a Valari different from the soldiers. This one wore white robes and had golden rings around each of its 4 wrists. Its black eyes studied Jinho with a curiosity that made his skin crawl. "I am Overseer Kalith," the alien said. Its voice was smoother than the soldiers', almost gentle. "I am the one who will study you." Jinho said nothing. He kept his face blank and his eyes forward. Kalith walked around him slowly, examining him like a farmer might examine an animal at market. "Fascinating. Your species is so young, so primitive, and yet you have spread across so many stars in such a short time. We have watched you for many cycles. We have always wondered how you do it." Still, Jinho said nothing. "You are afraid," Kalith said. "I can smell it on you. Your body is producing chemicals that tell me you want to run. But you stand still. You control your fear. This is interesting." The Overseer waved one of its hands, and a screen lit up behind him. Images appeared. Pictures of Earth. Pictures of human cities, human ships, human soldiers. "We know about your world," Kalith continued. "We know you fight among yourselves constantly. Wars over land. Wars over ideas. Wars over nothing at all. You are a violent species. Dangerous, perhaps, in your own small way. But alone. So very alone. Jinho finally spoke. His voice was rough from days without water. We are not alone. Calith made a sound that might have been a laugh. You mean your little alliance with the Kori traders? The friendship you claim with the Mendari? Those species are weak. They will not help you. They fear us too much. The overseer leaned closer, its black eyes filling Jinho's vision. Nobody is coming for you, human. You are mine now. Accept this truth, and your suffering will be less. The test began after that. They took samples of his blood. They scanned his brain. They measured his heartbeat and his breathing and the electrical signals in his muscles. They made him run on machines until he collapsed. They made him lift heavy objects until his arms gave out. They watched him eat and drink and sleep. They recorded everything. Days turned into weeks. Jinho lost count of how many times they poked him with needles and shocked him with strange devices. His body was covered with small scars. He was thinner now, his ribs showing through his skin. But he did not break. Every morning, he woke up and did exercises in his cell. Push-ups, sit-ups, squats, anything to keep his body strong. The guards watched him through cameras in the walls and made comments about how strange humans were. They did not understand why he kept trying. Every night, he scratched a small line into the wall with his fingernail, counting the days. Remembering that time was still moving. Remembering that somewhere out there, Earth existed. He whispered names to himself in the darkness. Hana, his mother, his friends from the academy, the streets of Bazan, the sound of waves against the shore. He held these memories like treasures, protecting them from the white emptiness of his cell. Overseer Calith visited him often. The alien seemed fascinated by Jinho's refusal to give up hope. Why do you still fight? Calith asked one day. You have no weapon, no allies, no chance of escape. Logic says you should surrender, but you do not. Why? Jinho looked at the overseer with steady eyes. Because they are coming for me? Who is coming? Earth. Calith made that laughing sound again. Your planet does not even know where you are. Even if they did, they could never reach this station. Our fleet would destroy them before they came close. Jinho smiled. It was a small smile, tired but real. You do not know humans very well. I have studied your species for cycles. I know everything about you. No, Jinho said. You know facts, numbers, data, but you do not know us. You do not know what we will do for each other. You do not know what we will sacrifice. You do not know our anger. The overseer stared at him for a long moment. Something flickered in those black eyes. Not fear, not yet, but perhaps the first seed of doubt. We shall see, Calith said quietly. We shall see. That night, alone in his white cell, Jinho looked up at the ceiling and thought about home. He thought about Hana waiting for his call that never came. He thought about his mother lighting candles and praying for his safe return. He did not know if his message had reached Earth. He did not know if anyone was coming. But he believed. He had to believe. Somewhere in the darkness of space, Earth was waking up. Somewhere, his people were preparing. Hold on, he told himself. Just hold on a little longer. And in the silence of his prison, Kang Jinho waited for the sound of human ships. The message arrived at Earth Defense Command at exactly 3:47 in the morning. A young officer named Bei Jiang was the first to see it. She read the 3 words on her screen and felt the world shift beneath her feet. They have me. She traced the signal. It came from the horizon's edge, a research vessel stationed at the far edge of explored space. The ship was not responding to any communication attempts. Its tracking beacon had gone dark. Jiang ran through the empty corridors of the command center, her footsteps echoing off metal walls. She burst into the office of her supervisor, Colonel Huang Deho, and told him what she had found. Within 1 hour, the message reached the highest levels of military command. Within 2 hours, it reached the World Council. Admiral Park Subin received the call while she was eating dinner with her family. Her husband saw the look on her face when she ended the call and knew immediately that something terrible had happened. She kissed her children and told them to be good. Then she left for headquarters. By morning, the full picture had become clear. Intelligence teams had analyzed the signal, traced its origin, and matched it with reports from allied alien species. The Valari Empire had attacked the Horizon's Edge. They had killed 11 crew members and taken 1 prisoner. Lieutenant Kang Jinho was alive. Somewhere in Valari space. Admiral Park stood before the World Council in a room filled with the most powerful leaders on Earth. Presidents, prime ministers, generals, and diplomats from every nation watched her on screens that covered the walls. "The situation is simple," she said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned with cold fire. "An alien empire has attacked a human vessel without provocation. They have murdered 11 of our people, and they are holding one of our soldiers as a prisoner." She paused and looked around the room. "They think we are weak. They think we are divided. They think we will do nothing." The Admiral pressed a button, and the main screen showed an image of Jinho from his service record. A young man with kind eyes and a small smile. "This is Lieutenant Kang Jinho. He is a son, a brother, a friend. He joined our fleet to explore the stars and protect his people. And now he sits in an alien prison, waiting for us to act." Admiral Park stepped forward, her voice rising. "I am not here to ask for your permission. I am not here to negotiate or debate. I am here to tell you what we must do. We must bring our soldier home. And we must make the Valari understand that humanity does not abandon its own." The room was silent for a long moment. Then the president of the Eastern Coalition stood up. His name was Im Jong-ho, an old man with white hair and steady hands that had signed peace treaties and war declarations. "I have lived through 3 wars on Earth," he said. "I have seen what happens when nations stand alone. But I have also seen what happens when we stand together." He looked at Admiral Park and nodded. "The coalition will send its full fleet. Every ship, every soldier. We bring him home." One by one, other leaders stood and made the same pledge. The Western Alliance, the Pacific Federation, the African Union, the Northern States. Every nation, every fleet. For the first time in human history, Earth was truly united. Not for conquest, not for territory, but for one man. Commander Li Wujin received his orders the next day. He was 45 years old, a veteran of a dozen conflicts, and the finest tactical mind in the fleet. His face was hard and scarred, but his crew loved him because he treated them like family. He gathered his officers on the bridge of the UED's Indomitable, the flagship of the first assault fleet. Around them, through the windows, they could see dozens of other warships preparing for departure. The largest military force humanity had ever assembled. "Listen carefully," Wujin said to his crew. "In a few hours, we will jump into Valari space. We will face an enemy that has never known defeat. An empire that has conquered worlds and enslaved species for thousands of years." He walked among them, looking into their eyes one by one. "They took one of us. One man. They think this means nothing. They think we will send angry messages and empty threats. They do not understand humans." Wujin stopped at the main view screen, which showed a star map with the Thurex system highlighted. "We are going to tear through their defenses. We are going to break their station. And we are going to bring Lieutenant Kang Jinho home. Not because he is important, not because he knows secrets, but because he is human. And we do not leave our people behind." He turned to face his crew, his voice dropping to a low growl. "When we are done, the entire galaxy will know what happens when you touch one of ours. They will tell stories about this day for 1,000 years. They will warn their children about the fury of Earth." The commander raised his fist. "For Jinho, for the horizon's edge, for humanity." Every officer in the room raised their fist and shouted back. The sound echoed through the ship, spreading from deck to deck until the entire vessel seemed to shake with the force of human determination. Outside, engines roared to life. Weapon systems activated. Navigation computers locked onto distant stars. The fleet launched. 43 battleships cut through the darkness of space. 200 support craft followed like wolves hunting in the night. 10,000 soldiers sat in their quarters, checking their weapons and thinking of home. Admiral Park watched them go from the command center on Earth. Her hands gripped the railing tight. "Bring him home," she whispered to the stars, and far away, in a white cell on an alien station, Jinho scratched another line into the wall and waited. He did not know it yet, but his people were coming, and they were bringing war. The Valari had never known fear. For 10,000 years, their empire had conquered everything in its path. Worlds fell before their fleets. Species surrendered before the first shot was fired. The name Valari meant terror in 100 alien languages, but on the day the humans came, the Valari learned what fear truly felt like. The first warning came from a patrol ship on the edge of the Thurak system. Its commander barely had time to send a message before his vessel exploded into a ball of fire. Contacts detected. Unknown fleet approaching. Numbers. The transmission ended in static. Overseer Calith stood in the command center of Thurak Prime and watched the sensor screens with growing disbelief. Points of light appeared at the edge of the system. Dozens of them. Then hundreds. An entire wall of ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel and forming into attack positions. "Impossible," Calith whispered. "They could not have reached us so quickly." But the humans had done something the Valari never expected. They had pushed their ships beyond safe limits. They had burned their engines until they nearly melted. They had crossed the space between stars in half the time any other species could manage. Driven by nothing but fury and love for one of their own, Commander Li Wujin stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the Valari station grow larger on his screen. It was a massive structure, a dark flower of metal and technology floating in the void, beautiful in its own alien way. But beauty would not save it today. "All ships, this is Fleet Commander Wujin," he said into his communicator. His voice reached every human vessel in the system. "You know why we are here. You know what they took from us. Today, we show the galaxy what humanity is capable of. Attack Formation Delta. Fire at will." The space around Thurak Prime erupted into chaos. Human missiles streaked across the darkness, leaving trails of blue fire behind them. Energy beams cut through the void like angry fingers of light. Valari defense ships rushed to intercept, but they were too slow, too scattered. The humans hit them like a hammer hitting glass. On the Indomitable, Wujin watched his tactical display and called out orders in a steady voice. He had studied the Valari for weeks during the journey here. He knew their tactics, their weaknesses, their patterns of thinking. They relied on fear and overwhelming force. They expected enemies to retreat and negotiate. They did not expect an enemy that wanted to fight. 3rd Squadron, flank left and hit their power stations. 7th Squadron, cover the assault transports. Everyone else, keep pressure on their main fleet. Do not let them organize. The battle raged for hours. Valari ships fell one by one, their purple hulls cracking and burning in the cold of space. But they were not weak enemies. They fought back hard. Human ships were damaged. Human lives were lost. The cost of this rescue would be measured in blood and tears. But the humans did not stop. They pressed forward through every barrage, every counterattack, every desperate Valari defense. Because somewhere in that station, one of their brothers was waiting. Captain Yoon Minji led the ground assault team called the Stormbreakers. She was 30 years old, with short hair and eyes that had seen too much war. Her team was the best of the best, soldiers who had trained for exactly this kind of mission. Their transport ship dove through the battle like a leaf in a storm. Minji gripped her seat as explosions shook the vessel. Beside her, 20 soldiers sat in silence, checking their weapons and armor. 30 seconds to breach, the pilot announced. Minji stood and faced her team. Remember the mission. Find the prisoner. Get him out. Nothing else matters. The transport slammed into the side of Thurak Prime with a grinding crash. Cutting tools activated, burning through the alien hull. Within moments, a hole opened into the station. Minji was the first one through. The inside of Thurak Prime was dark and strange, filled with corridors that twisted at odd angles. Emergency lights flashed red. Alarms screamed in alien languages. Valari soldiers rushed toward the breach point, their weapons raised. Minji's team moved like shadows. Human bullets were better than the Valari expected. Human tactics were smarter. Human soldiers were faster, more adaptable, more willing to sacrifice for each other. They pushed deeper into the station, leaving fallen enemies behind them. Minji followed the map they had constructed from intelligence reports. Heading toward the detention area where prisoners were kept, a Valari soldier appeared in front of her, its forearms swinging a blade that hummed with energy. Minji dropped low, fired twice, and rolled past the falling body without breaking stride. "Captain, we have heavy resistance ahead," one of her soldiers reported. "Push through. We are almost there." They fought through 3 more checkpoints. They lost 2 soldiers along the way, their bodies left behind for now, to be recovered later. Minji felt each loss like a knife in her heart, but she could not stop. Not yet. Finally, they reached the detention block. A long corridor lined with white cells, each one sealed with a heavy metal door. Minji moved from door to door, checking the small windows. Most cells were empty. Some contained aliens she did not recognize. And then, at the end of the corridor, she found him, a thin man with black hair and tired eyes. A face she had memorized from his service record. Kang Jinho, looking up at the sound of footsteps, his expression changing from resignation to disbelief. Minji blew the lock off the door and stepped inside. "Lieutenant Kang Jinho?" she asked. He nodded, unable to speak. She smiled beneath her helmet. "We are here to take you home." Back on the Indomitable, Commander Woojin received the message he had been waiting for. Package secure. Beginning extraction. He allowed himself one small moment of relief. Then he turned to his crew. "All ships, cover the extraction. Do not let anything touch that transport. Today, we bring our brother home." Outside, the battle continued to rage, but its outcome was already decided. The Valari were broken. Their station was falling. And in the middle of all that fire and death, a small transport ship flew towards safety, carrying one man who had never stopped believing that his people would come. The transport ship docked with the Indomitable as fire still rained across the Thurak system. Captain Yoon Minji helped Jinho walk through the airlock, supporting his thin body with one arm. He was weak from weeks of captivity, but his eyes were bright and clear. "Took you long enough," he said, his voice cracking but his spirit unbroken. Minji removed her helmet and smiled. Traffic was terrible. Jinho laughed. It was a strange sound after so many weeks of silence, rough and painful, but real. He was alive. He was free. He was going home. Commander Woojin met them in the medical bay. The commander looked at Jinho for a long moment, seeing the scars and the exhaustion, the marks of everything the young lieutenant had suffered. Then he reached out and placed his hand on Jinho's shoulder. "You did well, Lieutenant. You held on." Jinho looked up at the commander, tears forming in his eyes that he refused to let fall. "I knew you would come. I never stopped believing. We would have burned down the galaxy to reach you," Woojin said quietly. "Every star, every world. That is what humans do." The battle outside was ending. The Valari defense fleet had been destroyed. Thurak Prime was damaged beyond repair, its systems failing one by one. Surviving Valari soldiers surrendered in groups, dropping their weapons and kneeling before the human forces that moved through the station. And in the command center of the dying station, Overseer Khalith waited. Minji's team found him there, surrounded by dead screens and broken machinery. The Overseer made no attempt to fight or flee. He simply stood and watched as the humans entered. "You came for one soldier," Khalith said, his voice filled with something between horror and wonder. "One ordinary soldier. You crossed half the galaxy. You destroyed our fleet. You burned our station. For one man." Minji stepped forward, her weapon still raised. "Yes. Why? He is not a leader. He holds no secrets. His death would have meant nothing to your species." "That is where you are wrong," Minji replied. "Every human life means something. Every single one. That is what you never understood about us." She gestured to her soldiers, and they moved forward to restrain the Overseer. "You are coming with us," she told him. "Not as a trophy, not for revenge, but as a messenger. You will return to your empire and tell them what happened here." The human fleet departed the Thurak system as the station collapsed behind them. Ships that had been damaged were being repaired. Soldiers who had been injured were receiving treatment. And in a quiet room on the Indomitable, Kang Jinho sat alone and looked out at the stars. He thought about everything that had happened. The attack, the captivity, the endless white days in that cell, and then the impossible sound of human voices, the impossible sight of human faces, the impossible feeling of hands lifting him up and carrying him to safety. They came for him. They really came. The door opened, and Captain Minji entered. She sat down beside him without speaking. For a while, they just watched the stars together. "I do not know how to thank you," Jinho finally said. "I do not have words for what I feel." Minji shook her head. "You do not need to thank us. You are one of us. We take care of our own. But the cost, the ships that were lost, the soldiers who died, all of that for me, all of that for you," Minji agreed. "And every one of them would make the same choice again. That is who we are, Lieutenant. That is what it means to be human." 2 weeks later, the fleet returned to Earth. The world watched as the ships descended through the atmosphere. Every screen on the planet showed the same image: the UEDS Indomitable landing at the main spaceport, surrounded by thousands of cheering people. Jinho walked down the ramp on his own 2 feet. He was still thin, still tired, still carrying the weight of everything he had experienced. But he stood straight and kept his head high. Hannah was waiting for him at the bottom of the ramp. His little sister, now a grown woman with tears streaming down her face. She ran to him and threw her arms around him, holding him so tight it hurt. "I knew you would come back," she whispered into his shoulder. "I never stopped praying. I never stopped believing," he replied. Admiral Park Subban held a ceremony the next day. Leaders from every nation attended. Cameras broadcast the event to every corner of human space. But the most important moment came later, when Overseer Khalith was brought before the assembly. The alien stood in chains, looking small and defeated, so different from the proud creature who had once studied Jinho like an insect. Admiral Park handed him a single data chip. "This contains recordings of everything that happened. Every battle, every death, every moment of human sacrifice. You will take this back to your empire. You will show it to your leaders. And you will deliver a message." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper that still carried through the silent room. Lieutenant Kang Jinho was not special. He was not a general or a scientist or a person of great importance. He was one man on one small ship in a corner of space that most humans have never even heard of. And for him, we brought war to your doorstep. She paused, letting the words sink in. Every human life matters to us. Every single one. Remember this the next time you look at our stars. Remember the fire we brought to Thurak. Remember the fleet that crossed half the galaxy for one soldier. And know this with absolute certainty. If you ever touch another human, we will not stop at your stations. We will not stop at your fleets. We will come for your worlds. We will come for everything you have. And we will not stop until there is nothing left. Calith was released the following week. He returned to the Valari Empire with the recording and the message. Within a month, the Valari signed a non-aggression treaty with Earth. They would never attack a human vessel again. But the effects of that day spread far beyond the Valari Empire. Other species watched what had happened. They saw the fleet. They saw the battle. They saw a civilization cross the stars for a single soul. Stories spread from world to world, species to species. They became legends. They became warnings. They became the most important lesson the galaxy ever learned about humanity. Never take a human prisoner, because their kind will burn the stars to bring them home. On a quiet evening in Bizen, Jinho sat on the beach with Hana beside him. The waves rolled against the shore, sounding exactly the way he remembered. The sky was turning orange and pink as the sun set over the sea. "What are you thinking about?" Hana asked. Jinho smiled. "Home. I am thinking about home." He looked up at the sky, where the first stars were beginning to appear. Somewhere out there, the fleet was still patrolling. Somewhere out there, humans were still exploring, still reaching, still looking after each other. He was one of them. He would always be one of them. And he was finally home.